We got the whole world in our hands. We got
Hello and welcome back to the Eurotrips Football Podcast. We are back for another Premier League season preview, and this time it's a turn of Nottingham Forest. Now with me, I've got a Forest fan, a fellow writer for Vavel. Back with me today is Jamie Martin. How are you?
I'm all good, thank you. Not too bad, thank you. How are you?
Yeah, not bad. Obviously the first episode's come out by now, our Bournemouth episode, so it's getting a different part of the country now, but yeah, looking forward to chatting all things Nottingham Forest. Of course, we're normally a podcast that's been restricted to just a certain amount of members, but it's nice that we're now expanding our podcast and getting more people in. So it's good to have you.
Yeah, no, real privilege to be able to join you today. Thank you for the invite.
No problem at all. So we're going to ask you the same questions we started off asking our last guest as to, firstly, what made you a Forest fan?
My dad definitely. I think most people will probably say their dad as well, to be honest, or their mum. He was the football figure in my life, the person that introduced me to football. And I hated football when I was probably 3 or 4. It was the worst thing ever. Sitting in the living room watching football, 3 p.m. It's not the worst thing. I couldn't think of anything worse. And then over time, he said, "Oh, come to the Forest games with me." We used to leave at half time because I hated it. And then eventually I started to like it a little bit more. He got me into playing it. And Forest was always our team. It's always been my dad's team, my granddad's team, so and so. So yeah, it's always been a family thing. Forest, it's my local team. It's only over the river for us to walk over there. So yeah, it's always been Forest. And yeah, my dad introduced me to that.
Interesting that story because similar thing for me in terms of I didn't really get into football until 2002. So that would have been 7, I think that would have been. I remember when we had our old cat we used to have. We got on the same day Beckham scored that goal against Greece, and I remember that day my brother was watching it with my dad and granddad, and I was with my mum and Nana watching trying to get the cat. So it's funny how you look at. I would have been 5 or 6 at that point as well. So it's interesting how you can hate something so much or dislike something, and then it could take one little moment or one little thing and can completely turn you around. And now that's your team for life. But in terms of being a Forest fan, firstly, favourite ever player as a fan?
Oh, I mean, it's going to be a bit of a controversial one because I know it's. I don't think it ended particularly well. But I was always a big Lewis McGugan fan when I was younger. Lewis McGugan, Adlan Gidiora. I love both of them. I just thought they're brilliant. To be honest, the COVID years were a little bit of a kind of. I don't know. You can't really remember much from those COVID years, to be honest with you. But from the players I can remember as a kid growing up, yeah, Lewis McGugan, Adlan Gidiora were just sensational, I thought.
And maybe like a favourite memory as well. This might be obvious being a Forest fan of a younger generation, but what would you say is your favourite memory as a Forest fan?
Oh, it would be the 1-0 win against Derby when Ben Luan just got it in off the inside of the post. I think it was a header. I can't remember. I was sitting in the Brian Clough stand at the time, and I'm fortunate enough to be able to be in contact with Ben Luan now. And we talk about it often because it was one of the best nights of my life when I was younger. I mean, this Forest Derby feud's been going on for so long, and we're in a period where we're not in the same division anymore. Derby haven't beaten us for 6 or so years, and it's you just never would have thought that. And I do miss the Derby days. That's probably why that's my favourite memory, just because we don't see Forest v Derby anymore. So yeah, that's my favourite memory.
Interesting about local derbies because I'm a Liverpool fan, as I've probably told you before. As you can see behind me, one good thing came out of the COVID years, but for us, it was that same dilemma of last year, or this year especially, and last year as well with Everton. It's the fact that whilst I'm sitting in the boat with people who want them to go down, I've for the hatred between two clubs. I've always my dad's the same. We both would like to see him go down, but there's some fans that would like him to stay in because you get that rivalry, and especially whilst for next year or two at least, you've got both stadiums so close to each other. Even after that, I think there's some fans that actually wanted to not do well, but still stay in the Premier League because you get that local derby, you get that match day feeling in the city, and I think that it goes for any city, whether it's Forest against Notts County or whether it's Manchester derby, whether it's Midlands, wherever you are in the world, I think that there definitely are positives about having a local rivals not go down. And I'm sure Newcastle fans, I'm interested to see their point of view when we get our Newcastle fan on Keg later on in the series we're doing, whether he would like to see Sunderland back or not, because it's interesting debate. Now heading on to the upcoming 2023-2024 season, the current ins and outs, and we are recording this early July, so anything by the time this podcast comes out, middle of July, things might change. But as of time of recording, the main in really has only really been Chris Wood for £15 million, of course, was there last season anyway. And then other players that have gone straight to under 21 side, like Harry Griffith, Manny Norquette, and Will Brook. And then all the outside found major ones were all free transfers. So Andre A has been released, Cafu, not the Cafu, Jack Colback, and shockingly, after I wouldn't have thought this last year, Jesse Lingard. So overall, for you, Jamie, what's your take been on the current ins and outs? Of course, a lot different to 12 months ago.
Well, I mean, the Chris Wood deal will probably go down as the worst negotiated deal in Forest history because, and as much as, and by the way, I give every player a chance, and I want Chris Wood to do well, and it's not his fault that we paid what we did for him. That was a club fault. Should we have paid that much? Never in a million years. I mean, personally, I wasn't in the boat of bringing Chris Wood to the club anyway, because I don't think he suits our style of play, and certainly didn't last season, and obviously got an injury which took him out for the rest of the season. But he didn't fit what we needed in terms of a forward profile, but maybe it's just what was available at the time. But for £15 million, I mean, it just shows how bad negotiations have been for Newcastle and Forest, because Newcastle at the same time paid 30 million for him a year before or a year and a half before, and we're paying 15 million after. So we both got bad ends of the stick. I think we ended up probably getting the worst one, to be completely honest. But you know, at the end of the day, give him a chance. It's an in for Forest, but cost 15 million. Not a big fan. And as for the outs, the only one that I'm really devastated to see go is, in terms of their actual match contribution, is Jack Colback, because I thought he was a brilliant servant. I thought that maybe there was a role that he could play at Forest, but obviously it's Premier League now. There's no room for sentiment. And unfortunately, it's a 25-man squad place that's going to be taken by him. And Forest know that, and he'll probably want to move up north in the later years of his career and go back with family. But as for, Cafu was brilliant, I thought, in the Championship. I thought that there's a Championship club that should still snap him up, because I think he's a brilliant player. He's great at set pieces, really skillful on the ball. So I'll miss him for that, but didn't offer much because he didn't get selected or registered in the Prem. And as for Lingard and Ayew, their contribution was nil. So I'm not really interested, to be honest. Good luck to them in the rest of their careers. Lingard, good in the dressing room. Ayew just didn't really do anything for me. So yeah, that's my kind of review on those ins and outs so far.
Yeah, you mentioned Chris Wood. I mean, looking at his numbers for both Newcastle and Forest, for Newcastle only got 5 goals in 39 games and had just 1 goal in 7 games for Forest on loan last season. So when you think with Owoni already there, Brennan Johnson already there, you do question why, in a way, you would pay that money for someone who's probably going to be a third choice, maybe even fourth choice striker. It does seem a bit pricey, even in this current market, for a guy who's going to be your third or fourth choice striker.
Well, I mean, it's contextual because at the time, you've got to remember that Taiwo Awoniyi was out with a groin injury when we bought Chris Wood. And Taiwo Awoniyi was a month away from recovery. Brennan Johnson's not a number 9. He's a right winger. And he has scored goals, Brennan Johnson, and this I'm not disputing. But as a natural position, right wing is where he suits best. Using that explosive pace, the flair that he's got, that's what he suits better. He's not the number 9 like Awoniyi, because you saw Awoniyi in the last 6 games, the last 4 games, getting 6 goals, brilliant. But we didn't have him at that time, so we needed someone who was just an all-out striker, no other position, just that. And unfortunately, that was Chris Wood was the person that we chose. I don't feel he's what we need at all, but he's the person that we chose. And at the time, we didn't really have many options, so it was either bring Chris Wood in or resort to having Brennan Johnson or going for Morgan Gibbs-White as a false 9, or Sam Surridge was still available, and I think he would have been okay for us. I think he would have done all right, but he didn't get a chance, and we opted for the likes of Ayew, etc. So it was an awkward period of time, not just because of the Chris Wood transfer, but just because of the absolute nightmare that Steve Cooper had, because of the fact that there was some players there that just weren't of quality that Forest needed, that that are good enough for the Premier League. And Awoniyi luckily came back to his best when we needed him to. So yeah, I mean, at the time, Chris Wood would just be your number one, number two striker. But now it wouldn't even make the bench if we didn't pay 15 million for him.
I want to get your thoughts on this because it was a running joke for our last series for the whole of last season. I made a bet with fellow member of the podcast, Ryan. This basically is my Welsh bias coming into this, but I basically bet my mate Ryan that Brennan Johnson would score more goals than Gabriel Jesus. It's I think it was more I wasn't sure whether Jesus would work out when he signed, and I'd like you to try and guess how much I bet on this being true. I'll give you one chance to guess how much I bet on him.
Oh, with the Welsh connection, I'm going to go £40.
75.
That's ridiculous. I mean, I
Yeah.
back Brennan all the way, by the way. And I love all the Welsh guys, and I go out and watch Wales occasionally to play. But £75, that's a lot of money. That.
Yeah. Thankfully, I made a bit of a bet because I made a bet with other hosts of the podcast, Nine, about 3 years ago, both whilst we were both a bit half cut, where basically I bet my mate £50 that City would win the Champions League. This is the evening when they lost to Chelsea 2-3 years ago, whatever it was, that they'd win the Champions League in 5 years, and my mate Nine didn't. So in the end, I only lost £25. So thankfully, there was one good thing to come out of City winning the treble, and that was it.
Oh well, and and the videos of Jack Grealish, I thought that was a plus as well. But no, that's yeah, at least you won that bet. But I wouldn't recommend betting your way out of bets. That's a risky business. That.
Yeah, it's the last time I make a bet on the show. I was trying to add a bit of spice to the episode, but almost came back to bite me. I could have won 50 quid if I'd not had done that rather than lose 25. But swings and roundabouts. Now, of course, I mentioned it briefly before that you had such a big incoming and outgoings, or particularly incomings last summer. Not the best start to the season, quite a slow start, but eventually finished 16th, secured safety with a few games left. It was against Arsenal when he secured it, which ultimately got City the league title. Now coming into this season, far less incomings. I mentioned only really one player coming in. He's already been in with the team. Do you think that this will now see a more settled team in terms of, I think Steve Cooper now knows his best lineup, but do you think this will mean going into the season we're going to see a lot more of a calmer and more steady and not quite as bad a start of the season we had 12 months ago?
I mean, I hope so. Obviously, there's no guarantees with the Premier League. I mean, there is going to be some changes to our team, and obviously losing Renan Lodi in the back four is a bit of a loss. But and obviously you've got to adjust the new guys to the team as well, and that's why we've got a pre-season. So hopefully get some guys in early doors. But I mean, there's the opening fixtures aren't going to be easy, especially the away ones. You've got your likes of I think it's Arsenal, Manchester City. I'm sure Liverpool are probably in there as well. There's some tough away games for us, to be completely honest. But at the end of the day, that's the Premier League. There isn't really an easy game ever. Even Southampton last season, we beat them 4-3, but it's like they scored 3 goals. It wasn't easy, but most of the time we made it more difficult for ourselves. And I do believe that on many occasions we could have gone and won many more games, and I think we could have probably finished mid-table if it wasn't for the little mistakes that we made. So I think we'll start off well, build some foundations for a stronger season, and I think the fan base will just have to get behind the players, because it does help, and we proved that within those final Premier League fixtures. We proved just how important the 12th man really is.
Yeah, definitely. I mean, of course, the 1-0 win over Liverpool, yet off the win against Arsenal as well. You had some big results last year, and I think that will certainly help you in what you just alluded to, the start of your season. I mean, looking at your first few games, your first game mentioned Arsenal. That's your opening game away from home at the Emirates. You got newly promoted Sheffield United second. You got Man U away third, Chelsea away fourth. Then you got Burnley at home game week 5, and then City away, and then Brentford at home before the end of September. So Yeah, that is quite a hard start, but I think that it'll definitely gain some. You'll be confident going into it knowing that you did, take these teams and you beat Arsenal, you beat Liverpool, so you can go into these games against Chelsea and City, and Chelsea especially, which have at that point still a new manager trying to get used to the team he's got and so many players he's got to adjust to. Yeah, I think you could surprise a few. Um, and speaking of which, this is where we will finish off the podcast, which is going to be your overall table prediction for the season. So just to put it in context, our Bournemouth episode we had with Oliver Lee, he had Bournemouth finishing in 14th. That's sort of the realms of which the fan predictions are going to go. So for you, where in the table are Forest going to finish this season?
I'd like to say 13th. I think it's quite ambitious, but as a team, we have to be, we have to be happy with moving up one place a year, but we also have to be more ambitious than that because at the end of the day, you want to be achieving things. That's why we're in the Premier League, we're in the top division, and we didn't sit in the Championship for so long just for the joke of it, just for the fun of it. We want to come back up and we want to make a statement now. So staying up, getting mid-table, pushing further, maybe doing what like Aston Villa have done, that'd be great. I mean, I'm not going to count my chickens just yet, but I'd love to be able to do that if we can. And I think we've got the right coach to do it. We've got the right stadium, the right fan base, and hopefully we'll have the right recruitment that allows us to do that. And I've got all the faith in the ownership that that can happen. So yeah, I think I'm going to put it 13th, but I'm not making any bets.
You don't do what I did.
Not for £75 at least. You know what I mean? I'm not doing that.
Speaking of Steve, actually, before we do, actually, speaking of Steve Cooper, of course, we've seen a big trend, particularly the last maybe 10, 15 years, where managers get sacked like it's no tomorrow. And Steve Cooper was someone that, for a lot of teams, probably would have been sacked by at some point last season. And you've seen with other teams who did sack the managers early. I think Aston Villa were the exception because they sacked Steven Gerrard, brought in Unai Emery, and they ended up doing better. But Chelsea sacked Tuchel, they got worse. Tottenham, they sacked Conte, and even though it wasn't great when he was there, they still got worse under Ryan Mason. And there's a lot of teams that had sacked managers and it got worse. Whereas for you guys, you stuck with your manager and it paid off. So just how crucial that, because I think he's done a great job. Firstly Swansea getting into the playoff final against Brentford 2-3 years ago. And then obviously now he's taken you guys from quite low down in the table when he first joined to then going up. So just how good was it to see a club owners do that and actually stick to their manager?
It's refreshing. It is it's testament to what that ownership's about, what their new vision is, their new Premier League vision that they dreamed of when they bought the club in 2017. That's what they've always wanted, and they've achieved that, and they've instilled their confidence in Steve Cooper to achieve not only getting to the Premier League but keeping them in it, even in the most difficult times. I was there at Ellen Road when we lost 2-1, and I was there when there was a lot of speculation that Cooper was done. But you heard him on the radio and he sounded happy, and the ownership came out and said, look, we're not sacking him, we're keeping him. The maths says that at that time, if you had sacked a manager, we're essentially relegated. Leeds paid the price for that. Leicester paid the price for that. These teams all paid the price for not backing their managers. And I think it is a different situation, in fairness, with Jesse Marsh and Brendan Rodgers, because they are a lot to blame for the situations at their clubs, and their clubs shouldn't really be anywhere near that kind of area. Leicester, especially on paper, a much better team than a relegated side, or they were. But Forest, we had the 30 signings, we had the players still integrating, we had the injuries, third most injuries in the Premier League last season, 37 instances, and at the end of the day, we had it tough. And I'm not just saying this because I'm biased, but we had it tougher than most Premier League sides last season. We did, and that's the truth. And Steve Cooper had to overcome a lot more adversity than any other Premier League manager, given our circumstances. So it's just brilliant to see them give him that confidence. And having spoken to Steve Cooper on a couple of occasions, he's just such a down-to-earth person. He could be on this podcast right now and just have this same chat with us, and it would just be so relaxing, and he's just such a people's person. He knows what it's like to be a Forest fan. he understands what it's like to work in media and the questions that we're going to ask, and he knows what answers to give you. And he knows what to say, and he knows how to act on those things. So he's an overachiever for me. He's an overachiever. He came to a bottom of the league Nottingham Forest, and didn't make us into world beaters just yet, but he's made us into a team that can achieve, and he's made us into a fan base that can believe. So yeah, I think brilliant manager, ownership excellent for backing him, and it's nice to see that at Forest now after years of instability.
Amazing stuff. And that is where we will end the podcast. But before we do go, I'll give you a chance just to quickly plug your own social media. So, of course, if you just walk out on our socials anyway, so you will see his handle via that. Because if you listen to this on a train or whatever you're doing, or in your car or something like that, and you haven't yet got access to Twitter, Jamie, where can we find you on social media?
On Twitter, you can search at I'm Jamie Martin. And on Instagram, you can search Jamie Martin_journalist, or on YouTube, you can just search J Martin, and I'll be on there. So that's my free social medias. And thank you for inviting me. Really enjoyed chatting to you, and it's been an honour to talk about Nottingham Forest.
Well, the pleasure is all mine. I enjoyed having you on the podcast. I'll look forward to hopefully linking up again at some point in the future. But in the meantime, this has been the Eurotrips podcast. I've been Andy, this has been Jamie Martin, and we will see you guys for our next season preview.